Hi, this is Jamey with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite game mechanism in Rex. Rex is a six-player game, plays up to six players. It's a game about, it's an area control game, really. You're just trying to control three areas on the board, and then you win the game. There's a lot of other mechanisms that go into the game, but that's the core idea. With one caveat, and I'll tie into that with my favorite mechanism, which is the idea of alliances in the game. The basic idea is if you ally with one other person, then collectively between the two of you, you have to control four areas instead of three to win the game. You can also have a three-way alliance, that's the maximum, and if you do that, you have to control five areas, and there are only five areas that you have to control on the board, that you can control on the board for endgame scoring. So you have to control all five to win if you're in a three-person alliance. Now the reason, so we played Rex, this is a first-time game. We played it a few days ago, played it on Wednesday, and it lasted about 4.5 hours. It was a longer game. And alliances don't happen organically in the game. They happen at certain times. So at the end of every round, you have to draw this, it's essentially an event card, I forget the name of it, but you draw an event card and something happens. And some of those cards, it's a big deck, it's like 20 cards, some of those cards are ceasefire cards. They're ceasefire, and they say, okay, now this is the time when you can make or break alliances, and when you can exchange influence, which is essentially money in the game, when you can exchange influence with other players. You can bribe players. If you join an alliance with a player who has a lot of money, they can give you some of their money, things like that. And I really, really like this element of the game. Except for one little thing that I'll get into in a second. But I really like that you can't just always make alliances, that there are set times when you can do it, when you can make or break them, because it adds to the variability of the game. In some games, you might make an alliance, you might have that card come up in the first round, and you might make an alliance. In some games, you might not have that card come up until the fifth round or the sixth round. In our game, it did not come up into the fifth round, and this is going to be what I'll talk about in a moment. But for the most part, I like that variability. The other thing I like about it is that there are multiples of these cards in the deck. So early on in the game, you might make an alliance, and then you might control, say, two areas. So say you make the alliance in like the second round, and then in the fifth round, you control two areas, and you're pretty powerful, and you might be able to control a third area and just win outright. And so you might make an alliance in the second round, and then the alliance card might come up later on at a time where you really want to break the alliance. Or it may not come up. And so even though you're in a great position to break the alliance and just win the game, you can't break it. You're stuck with it. You have to stay with that other player for the win or the loss. And I really, really like that aspect of the game. That kind of happened in our game where there were players that probably may have wanted to break an alliance, but they couldn't because the card wasn't available. Now the catch to all of this, and this is both what signaled to me that this is a great mechanism and that it's not perfect. In our game, we played for about 2.5 hours without hitting a single ceasefire card. And the game was starting to drag a little bit. Like it was kind of repetitive. Some players became really powerful because they were getting all the money in the game. There's a lot of asymmetry in the game, so there are two factions that end up with a lot of money. And you need influence. That's the money to do well in this game. And the alliance card just didn't come up. And the moment it came out, the moment that ceasefire came out, the game just came to life. It was pretty incredible. Like because we were just, it was 2.5 hours in. Some people I think would have been willing to quit even before that. I was having a pretty good time. I wanted to keep playing. But when that first alliance happened, it just jumped to life. We were talking to one another. We were negotiating. We were bribing. It was funny the way the things that were forming. Like two people, there ended up being three alliance. I became part of a pity alliance because I was doing terribly. Another player took pity on me, and I joined with that player. It was awesome. And then I think every round from then, so there were 8 rounds. That was the end of the 5th round, and at least 2 out of the final 3 rounds, we hit the other ceasefire cards. So we had a lot more of those interactions, but we had them one after another, and we didn't have them until 2.5 hours into the game. And so I really wish, if I did play this again, I might even stack the deck a little bit so that we know that somewhere within the first 3 rounds, one of those ceasefire cards will come out. We don't know which one, but at least one will come out. Because that, I think, is the heart and soul of the game. I wanted to mention one other thing, because, I mean, the whole game is, the whole alliance mechanism is the most brilliant part about it. There's some other clever things with combat and whatnot, but the alliance part is the best part. I mentioned a couple of the elements of it. The one last element of alliances is that every player has like about 3 different special abilities with their faction. And you also get 2 cards. And those cards have one of those special abilities on it, the same special ability. My faction was really good at, I could tell an opponent when I was about to go into combat, they had to tell me part of how much power they were committing to combat, or a certain element that they were going to commit to combat. I knew more than I should have known. And my 2 alliance cards had that ability on that. And what that meant is if I had an alliance with someone else, I had to give them that card, both as a marker to show them that I was allied with them, but also they got that ability. But I still have some control over it. So if that person goes into combat, I get to tell the person they're fighting to show them some information. I'm in a little bit of control, but they have a new special ability. And I think this adds a lot of interesting elements to the game, because you might be a faction that's not very good at fighting, and so you might try to ally with a faction that is good at fighting. And it creates, I love when things combo up in games. So you have your core abilities, but you can combo with all these other abilities throughout the game, depending on who you have alliances with. I love that mechanism. So I love pretty much everything about the alliance mechanisms in this game. I'd love to hear what you think about Rex in general, or if you have a game that has an alliance mechanism in it, what is your favorite alliance mechanism in a game? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thanks.